Hey, Yinning at Life gang. It's Kimberley Roberts of the SolefulYin brand. I'm here to dish out all things about traditional Chinese medicine, Yin Yoga, Reflexology, and of course, I'm here to disrupt your mind. So, thanks so much for pressing play on today's episode. Let's do this. If you're not breathing deeply and with intention and purpose in your yin practice, then you're not actually doing yin. In today's episode, we are diving deep into why it is so important to deliberately utilize your breath in your yin practice. Now, before you think, oh, this is just going to be a snoozeville, I already know I have to breathe. Here's the thing. I want to challenge you to think about there are different ways that you can breathe in your yin practice to create different results in your body and in your mind, which ultimately affect your life, right? So we all know that yin is great for creating a flexible, mobile body. Woohoo! Who doesn't love that benefit, right? But aren't you a little bit, or maybe some of you a lot, more interested in what yin yoga can do for your life? Like how it can help you create an extraordinary life? I don't know. I certainly am. I mean, I'm over 40. I get that. You know what? My joints are changing. My body is changing. Connective tissue and fascia in my body is changing. And so the long holds in yin poses are really beneficial for that. I get it. I love it. But I love how when I start playing with my breath in different ways, it creates a different effect in my body, but it also creates a different effect in my mind. And I find that fascinating. I don't know about you, but I find that fascinating. So let's talk about breathing in yin because it can be a little bit different than breathing, say, in a vinyasa flow class, right? Like in a vinyasa flow class, we're often looking for a continuous stream of breath, right? As we're moving dynamically through the poses. But in yin, with the long held stillness in a pose, depending on the pose you're in, you're going to want to breathe differently. So let's dive into what that kind of looks like. So, for example, let's talk about dragon pose. Okay. If you don't know what dragon pose is, it's a low lunge, right? You have one knee that is on the ground and the other foot has stepped forward. And so basically, you are stretching out the hip flexors. And for a lot of people, especially people that sit all day long, this pose is like intense to say the least, right? Like very intense. That's why I think they call it dragon pose. I mean, according to, the traditional way of yin yoga, right, which uses the more Eastern names for the poses, right? Like pigeon pose, we call it sleeping swan, right? So, but if you practice more from the Western lineage, then you're going to hear more like, okay, let's come into a low lunge, but it's dragon pose. And what do dragons do? They breathe out fire, right? And if you think about your hip flexors, the interesting connection here is between your hips and your liver, okay? Now, through the inner part of your thighs, we have the liver meridian channel. Okay, and it's stimulated in this pose. Now, we're also stimulating stomach and spleen as well. The stomach meridian channel is more on the like through the front of the leg, The spleen is on the inside, but it's up a little bit higher towards the top of the leg. Okay. Liver is kind of a little bit lower. But regardless, you're stimulating, right? And so with the liver meridian channel, the liver holds the emotions of anger, frustration, irritation, resentment, rage, which are all very fiery emotions, right? And let's not forget the fact of what does the liver do, right? It's our main detoxification organ. So it's fiery all the time. So when we're in dragon pose, what I often see happen when I teach this pose, and especially when people are super tight in their body, is all of a sudden they start to tense up and they restrict the breath. And then what happens? What happens when you tense up and you restrict your breath? I'll tell you what happens. Your body gets tighter. It starts resisting more. Your breath gets more and more shallow. And all of a sudden in your mind, it starts getting scattered. You start having racing thoughts. Maybe even the emotions come up, magnified, and you become completely disconnected from what you are intending to do with the pose, right? Like you're intending to do a few things in the pose. In a yin pose, you're intending to stretch out connective tissue, fascia, stimulate ligaments, joints, right? All that good stuff. You're also there, if you subscribe to this theory, of releasing emotions that you hold in your body. You're also there to get a little bit of introspective time. I use my yin practice as a meditation for me to dive into my life and what do I want to create and what am I not happy with that I'm like, okay, this needs to change. And maybe what needs to be tweaked a little bit, and maybe even what doesn't need to change at all because it's beautifully working as it is. But regardless, without the breath component, the energy in your body, the energy that flows through the meridian channels in your body, does not flow effectively if you are holding your breath in. Now, holding the breath in, I mean, we're talking about an extended holding the breath and like not breathing or breathing really shallow. I'm not talking about when I invite you to take a breath in for 3 counts, hold for 2 counts, and then exhale for 5, right? Like, no, we're not talking about that. We're talking about not even breathing. You're just literally like, it's so shallow that you don't even feel it. What that does is it keeps you in a sympathetic nervous system state. Okay, flight or fright. Is that what we're looking for in our yin practice? No, we want to shift into parasympathetic state, right? So the only way that you can shift into a parasympathetic state to get calm is you need to breathe deeply because when you breathe deeply, you are sending a signal to your nervous system that it is okay to calm down, that it is safe for you to release and let go. But when you're holding your breath in or it's super shallow, it signals your body and your nervous system to do the opposite. Let's ramp up the flight or fright and let's just be completely disconnected. And then really, you're not doing yin yoga. I don't even think, and this is my own personal opinion, I don't even think you're really even effectively stretching if we just talk about the physical aspect of it. Because the one thing that connective tissue and fascia loves is deep breathing. it helps to actually create a more elasticity in the fascia and in the joints. Okay? Because your body is relaxing, it's releasing, it's letting go. And so we don't have all that bent up tension. This is why it's so important to breathe. Now, if we come back to dragon pose, and I talk about like, I will often invite my students to breathe in through the nose and breathe out through the mouth and think of like, I am breathing out all that fire that's in my body, all that heat that is in my body, all that anger or frustration or irritation that's in my body. I am breathing that out. So it feels really good to do a powerful exhale out the mouth. But then you could also be in a far more, I'm going to say, passive pose. Like say you're in reclined butterfly, okay? So you're lying on your back, you have the soles of your feet together, your knees are open, your legs are in a diamond sort of shape. You're propped up. You know, there's a little bit of physical sensation in the inner thighs, the outer thighs. And you're like, this is calming. So maybe in that instance, you're breathing in and out through the nose, maybe finding a longer exhale to really amplify that calming effect, right? And then if I was in, say, Sphinx pose, which is a back bend, right? I might want to amplify the energetic benefit, right? Like I want to bring more energy, more vitality into my body. So I'm going to breathe in. I'm going to inhale longer than I'm going to exhale. Okay. So you see how, depending on what you're looking for, and as a general rule of thumb, if you are looking to bring more energy, to boost your energy levels in your body, right, then a longer inhale would serve you better. Now, if you're looking to have a more calming effect, typically a longer exhale. When you're just kind of looking for overall balance, same ratio of breath in to breath out. See? Like, and I'm not saying that if, you know, it has to be done this way. This is your practice and it's your body. But what I want you to start to think about is, depending on the pose that I'm in, what kind of breath would serve me the best? And just play with it. Like literally, there is no wrong way to breathe. The only wrong thing you can do is not to breathe. It's to hold your breath in and just get really shallow with it. But when you deliberately experiment, and I'm telling you, I want you to deliberately experiment. Get on your mat, get in some poses, and start playing. Maybe you're going to inhale through the mouth sometimes. Maybe you're going to exhale through the mouth. Maybe you're going to inhale through the nose. You know, like just play with it and see how it changes not just the physical pose, okay? Like what happens in your physical body. But say you're feeling really kind of meh, ho hum about your life, right? You're like, you know what? My life doesn't really excite me very much. You might want to explore finding a more energizing breath, okay? Where your inhale's a little bit longer than your exhale. And the reason I say that is because as that longer inhale comes in through the body and it energizes you, it's not just physically energizing you, it's mentally energizing you, right? And when we are mentally energized, okay, the mental clarity is there. We release the brain fog. Then all of a sudden, we can start to look at our life a little bit differently. because our mind is more clear. It's crisp, right? Now, say I'm super stressed out about something in my life. Well, the worst thing I could do would be to hold my breath in, to make it really shallow. The best thing that could serve me would be to find a really long exhale where it starts to create a calming effect in my nervous system. And then from there, my mind will pick that up. And all of a sudden, if my mind is more calm, I can think more clearly. But when you are fidgeting in poses and you're not propped up enough and your breath is super shallow, you are sending your nervous system, your mind, and your body all the wrong signals. And instead of releasing, you're holding on. And that could mean holding on to physical tension. That could mean holding on to thoughts that don't serve me. That could mean holding on to beliefs that I don't need to hold on to. That could mean holding on to certain ways of doing things in my life that maybe, you know what? It's time to let that go. But the breath work is like an amplifier in your practice. I want you to think of that. It's like an amplifier. Just like when I say, like when I teach acupressure or reflexology in my yin practices, I say that they amplify the yin practice, right? Because they do. They're an amplifier. Your breath is an amplifier as well. And it can be just the opposite. I will tell you that in my own personal practice, there have been so many moments of clarity, so many aha moments, so many like, holy shit, I could do this kind of moments that came from amplifying my breath in the yin practice, whether it was like going super deep with the inhale or super long with the exhale, or sometimes it was just like balancing, like I'm just balancing out. Regardless, mind blowing experiences. And if I can learn to experiment with my breath in my yin practice, I can take that breath work off the mat and into my everyday life, right? It's the same thing with your yin practice. Like what you discover on the mat is so much more than just the physical stretch. Some people say that that's all the practice is just stretching out. And I will often say, yes, it's stretching out your body, but it's also stretching out your mind. Think of the breath work as almost like clearing out cobwebs in your mind. Or if you think of like, if you were outside and you had like a filter in your hand and it was full of dust, and all of a sudden you blow all over it and the dust just like goes all over the place. And next thing you know, you're just left with a clean filter. Think of it that way. Like most of us take our breath almost for granted because you don't have to do anything to breathe, right? Like your respiratory system is just there. But when you work with it deliberately, you can create so much more. Even if you were to, like, I'm going to give you an example of, let's let's do some lung meridian poses, okay? Things like supported fish, melting heart, half graceful bow, right? Arm pigeon. Like these are all opening up the lung meridian channel, right? Where we breathe. So if you're someone that suffers from respiratory issues, like say you have asthma or you get bronchitis or you get pneumonia a lot, you just have really, weak respiratory function, right? Lung capacity. The breath work while you're still in a pose can really help you increase your lung capacity. Because if you're, sometimes if you're trying to breathe real deep, when you're doing a bunch of stuff, it doesn't work because there's too much going on, right? You're moving around. Like sometimes if you've ever gone running or jogging, for example, sometimes it's like you're trying to catch your breath all the time, but breathing really deep can be hard because there's so much going on at the time. But when you're in a yin pose, you're in stillness, right? You're not moving. You're supported, so your body is safe. And you can focus on the breath and make it the main purpose of the pose. Think of the breath work comes first, the stretch automatically comes second. That's how I want you to start to look at your practice, playing with your breath. Maybe you're doing 2 to 4 counts. Maybe you're doing 4 to 8. Maybe you're doing 3 to 5. Maybe you're doing 5 to 7. Maybe you're putting holds in there in between. It doesn't matter because everybody is going to have a different experience, even if we all did the same breath work all the time. So I want you to start playing with your breath in poses and start to notice how you feel, not just physically, how much easier it makes the pose physically, but how much quieter your mind is, how much clearer it is. And I will tell you that when you have awareness and clarity, you've got fire to create whatever it is that you want for yourself. You have all the tools to create an extraordinary life that is filled with all the things that you desire and all the bucket list items checked off. So thank you so much for pressing play on today's episode. Comment below if you feel like, wow, I didn't know about playing and experimenting with my breath. I'm going to give it a try. If you know someone that could benefit from this episode, please feel free to send them the link, share it with them, leave a review. Let us know how this podcast is serving you.